Hi, Dr. Ross. Good to talk to you again, even if I'm not seeing you. I'm doing my individual presentation on our group projects on the effects of seasoning on overall intensity ratings of flavor, aroma, saltiness, color, and volume of the crunch of the potato chips. We chose to use just one brand of potato chips. We used 4 different flavors, but we chose to use just one brand because we wanted to eliminate any possibility of differences caused by using different brands, different cooking methods, things like that. So we just used all Lay's. We used barbecue, sour cream and onion, regular, and lightly salted, so we could do a lot of comparing between the barbecue, sour cream and onion, and the chips that didn't have the added seasoning besides the salt. We did find in all of our research that there were a lack of studies that we could find about all of these attributes, about the perception and ratings, just straight out ratings of these attributes. And the 4 attributes that we chose, we felt were the attributes most used in consumer choice of potato chips, because potato chips are that salty, flavored, aroma, crispy, crunchy, snack food choice. So we felt that the ones we chose best represented it, and also represented it, even though the study didn't show preferences, we realized these things are preferential things for most people when choosing, most consumers when choosing a potato chip variety. So we wanted to rate the intensities of these common characteristics of potato chips. The point of the study was to enable future researchers to determine intensities and use those for consumer studies instead of trained panel studies, to determine shelf space for chips, because that can be quite limited, preference, where to place them on shelves and things like that is what we were thinking that future studies could use these for, having a baseline intensity rating for these Lay's really famous potato chips. So the 5 attributes that we chose were, of course, flavor, aroma, saltiness, color, and volume. Materials and methods. I'm going to go over the materials we used for determining our standards for our training and also for the actual test. So for standards, for flavor, we used the spicy nacho Dorito chips. For aroma, we used a salt and vinegar chip. We felt that would be a pretty pungent, smelly chip to just write a standard from. Saltiness, pretzels can be associated closely with saltiness, so we chose a pretzel crisp for that. For color, we chose a pico de gallo chip, so it's kind of a salsa type chip. And then volume, we used kettle chips because those tend to have a louder volume, higher crunch value to them than just the regular cooked chips. For training, we chose to use something a little different than chips. We wanted something just a little separate from the actual study so that we can come up with those where we're all agreeing closer to what those intensities are for the things that we chose. So we used original cheddar, pretzel, and Parmesan goldfish crackers, so some different flavors, intensities, aromas, and things. And during the training, after rating, going through and using the test model and rating all of them, we had discussions between the 4 of us about the ratings we had, and if we were way different from each other on them, we discussed why and went back and ran it again after having the discussion and reminding ourselves what the standards were based on from when we established the standards. For our evaluation, we used a randomized incomplete block design. We felt that we would have too much sensory fatigue between the 4 of us with the saltiness on the chips. It would just be too much. So we felt that an incomplete block design was more appropriate than trying to do the complete block design with just 4 panelists. We did 2 repetitions of the test, and we used the 15-centimeter line scale for ranking of the attributes. For the analysis, thank you very much for running those for us, because none of us had those programs, so we do appreciate that. We used the ANOVA and Fisher's LSD for those attributes that we determined did have a significant difference. Volume, no significant difference was found there, but the other 4 attributes of aroma, color, salt, and flavor were found to have significant differences between the treatments. You can see on our PCA graph, there's actually, for regular chips, it did not rank highly for any of the attributes. The volume, like I said earlier, was highest for the lightly salted chips, barbecue, aroma, and color. And for sour cream and onion, the highest ranking was for the saltiness factor on the sour cream and onion chips. So sour cream and onion and barbecue overall had the highest intensities for everything but volume. Flavor and color had the highest standard deviations. We felt that could possibly be because of some training errors. Maybe in the future, further training would be, more training would be better. Again, we were limited by the time constraints we had to complete the project. Or because flavor and color can be such strong indicators of your perception of a potato chip, it could be that these strong feelings that the panelists had clouded their judgment even after the training for flavor and color. Regular and lightly salted, not surprisingly, had the lowest overall intensities. However, the regular might have thought it would have rated a little higher for saltiness, but it didn't. The hypothesis, we had 3 hypotheses. We had that we felt saltiness and color would be greater in sour cream and onion and the barbecue chips. If we had separated those 2 things, the hypothesis may have been correct for one and not the other, but because we put them both together, we had to reject that hypothesis that the saltiness and color was greater for both of those because of the differences. Color, yes, it was found to be greater for both of those, but saltiness, not so much in the barbecue as in the sour cream and onion. Our second hypothesis, we actually hypothesized that the flavored chips would have a higher volume than the non-flavored chips, and overall, even though there wasn't a significant difference, the unflavored, lightly salted chips actually had the highest volume. Whether that was because of the seasoning on the chips or because you perceive it more because of the lack of seasoning, lack of flavor in your mouth makes you thinking more about the sound of the chip was unclear. So that would probably take some further study to clarify what caused that attribute to be a little lower in the lightly salted chips. We also hypothesized that flavor and aroma intensities would be greatest in the sour cream and onion and the barbecue chips, and in that we were correct in our hypothesis. So the added flavors did add to the intensity, the added seasonings, excuse me, did add to the intensity of the flavor and the aroma of both of those chips. So the attributes rated by the panel, like I said earlier, are what we felt considered positive attributes for most consumers, that they indicate liking for potato chips. Most people who go to get potato chips are going for that salty aroma, flavor type of thing going on. And a lot of times when they get plain potato chips, I know from personal experience, I want a dip or something to go with those plain potato chips to give them a little more flavor and character. Or I use them crunching them up over a dish. So the increased rankings can, we feel, be tied to consumer favorability, and hopefully they can be used for, well, as the intent was, for future studies on consumer preferences by having a standards and references for the different attributes that we felt were the most important for potato chips. Dr. Ross, the class has been great. Thank you for everything you've done for us, and hopefully you have a great summer.